It's a question that was posed at the Democratic National Convention in 1968, which had riots and arrests and the Chicago 7, and there was a guy named Abbie Hoffman that stepped up and said, "Where did all of these hippies come from?" Abbie Hoffman did not consider himself to be a hippie. He was political. He was a yippie. And they were political. And so, where do you think? A couple of guesses. Where do you think hippies came from? Anybody got a guess?
Time Life magazine.
Say it again.
Time Life magazine.
Time Life magazine. Is that what you said?
Yes.
I tell you, Bob's on it. He is what is known as hip. Okay. Hip came from the jazz singers and the beatniks and all that kind of stuff. And hip meant aware, in the know. And if you were hip, if you were in the beatniks things and all that jazz stuff, that's where the word actually morphed from. But it comes from another stranger place than that. Weird place. For what it's worth. I'm giving you clues. For what it's worth. Pandora's box. What's a Pandora's box? Anybody know what a Pandora's box is? Say it again. Pandora's.
You'll be sorry.
Yeah, you open it, you'll be sorry. Yeah. All right. So here's a little prompt sign. Can everybody see us?
Back door.
All right. Well, Bob nailed it. Basically, our awareness of who hippies were and what they were came from Time Life magazine. It was an article written that laid it out and basically went way back to the Greeks, the Cynic. We went to the Persian philosophers, and then rolled forward to a group that most of us probably never heard of, Der Wandervogels. Der Wandervogels. You ever heard of the Der Wandervogels? They're German. Around 1900 in Germany, actually 1890 through 1910. There was a big movement in Germany, the Wandervogels, and when I give you the description of it, Dell and I and everybody that's been to the Florida Folk Festival will understand that's the definition. They love to play informal folk music. They love to do it camping and hiking and eating organic food. Okay, and there was a whole movement of these folks.
Wonderful.
But you can imagine from 1900 and through the middle of the century, this kind of fell out of disfavor because they were not very structured at all. And so they gravitated, a whole bunch of them, to Los Angeles, California. And they established the first health food restaurants and the first organic stores. And they loved the lifestyle there that they could do in around the LA area. And around 1959, a real famous song made famous by Nat King Cole was sung. And it's called Nature Boy. Nature Boy, there's a bunch of people that have recorded the song. It's a beautiful song. I would not really think of it in terms of hippies if I ever heard it. But there's this guy who wrote the song. He lived under the big L, under the Hollywood sign. He and his family, they all lived there. His name was Eden Abez. And when Nat King Cole got this song, he says, I need the rights to this song so I can sing it. Let's find this guy. And they did. And he was living under the L. He'd been living there for years with his family. That's where he wanted to live. He thought it was great. He wrote a bunch of songs that a bunch of big famous people did. And what did he look like? Long hair. 1949 he wrote this song. Long hair, big shaggy beard, long robes, sandals. The spitting image of every Western version of Jesus we've ever seen. That's the guy. 1949 he wrote this tune. So, why did I mention Pandora's box? Well, here's where it kind of all starts to gel, about 1965. There's a famous song, and you'll recognize it when I do this. I'm going to have to set this down so it doesn't fall. Do You'll recognize it immediately. You've heard it in a ton of movies, all kinds of documentaries. Getting the hang of it? It's called For What It's Worth. And it's, as some folks call it, the seminal song of the 60s, representing the hippies. But that's not what it was about at all. It was about a drinking place called Pandora's Box that seats about 200 people, roughly about like what's in this room. And the local people that lived around there didn't like all these people coming, drinking and carousing all the night, so they decided to establish a curfew, no drinking. Well, the radio station heard about it, blasted it out, said, this is totally unfair, we need to have a big demonstration, and so thousands of people showed up. The place only held 200, and they spilled out into the streets, and all these police showed up. Now this was kind of orchestrated by the radio station. So all these people were out in the streets, and they started arresting them. And they arrest Jack Nicholson, and they arrest Peter Fonda, and they arrest a bunch of very notable people that take prominence as time goes on. So, where did the hippie movement come from? We could say it was organic. We could say it was orchestrated. Orchestrated, organic. Let's see if I can get through this a little bit. Something's happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there telling me I got to beware. It's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Well, so this Time Life article lays it out. Everybody starts paying attention to these hippies. At no point, well, the guesstimation is at no point was there more than 0.02% of the population that was hippies. That's a real teensy piece. But so folks probably remember Woodstock, folks probably remember the Summer of Love, folks probably remember Altamont, the festival, folks remember a number of things, but that song was written years before this all happened. So, how did it all bubble up there in Los Angeles? How did Stephen Stills, who wrote this song, a former special operations soldier in Vietnam, way before any of the major troops arrived, special operations in the Phoenix program, which went around winning hearts and minds by assassinating local people that didn't match up with what the U.S. thought should be going on in Vietnam, winning hearts and minds. So he came back, and why did he come back? Well, that's a big curious thing, because Neil Young described it. We were like lemmings being drawn to Los Angeles. There was no music scene in Los Angeles. There was hardly anywhere to even play. But we were like lemmings. We don't even know why we showed up, but we did. And where did they show up? They went to a place called the Log Cabin, which was up on the Laurel Canyon Loop. Now the Log Cabin was the central point of the office at OSS. Before the CIA, there was the OSS. And that's where all the officers and the spies and different things all congregated at this big, huge complex that had tunnels that went off and over to other houses and all. It was a real secret place, but they vacated it, and a guy named Frank Zappa moved in with his wife. Frank Zappa despised the hippies. He wanted nothing to do with the hippies, but he looked like a hippie. He did crazy stuff all the time. But he wasn't the only one. There were a whole group of folks, Cass Elliot, David Crosby, John Phillips, Jim Morrison. They all came and congregated at this place called the Log Cabin. Now that's curious. Why they would, not an invitation, they just showed up there. They just showed up and like lemons, they didn't even know why. Well, it raises a big curiosity because right next to the Log Cabin were all these OSS and CIA and then all the Nazis that came over after World War II and Operation Paperclip. They all came over and occupied the area. And they were doing mass mind control programs through the CIA, how to change people's perception on a mass basis, just like they had done in Germany, using a lot of the same techniques. So they're right there at Lookout Mountain, immediately adjacent to the Log Cabin. And all these guys that I just mentioned to you that are icons, and there's more, Joan Baez, a bunch of them, are all sons and daughters of military, high-ranking military officers that were involved in mind control, chemical warfare, all kinds of fringe kinds of things that we would think about. Way back in the early 50s, there was a program called it's hard to remember all this stuff, but there was a program called Bluebird, Project Bluebird, and Stephen Stills wrote a song about it. Listen to the song, if you will. It's a crazy song. It's all about crying uncontrollably and doing all this stuff. Well, that's exactly what the projects were about. Using trauma-induced, drug-induced trauma to young officers' children at various military bases. And those folks that I just mentioned to you all lived on those military bases. Weird. 10 years before, it's where the Manchurian Candidate came from, and the whole idea of programming somebody that they don't even know what they're doing. They show up and they don't even know what they're doing. So anyway, they all show up. So listen to this next line here. Battle lines, be informed. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their mind, getting so much resistance from behind. It's time we stop. Children, what's that sound? Everybody look at what's going down. Stop, children, what's that sound? Everybody look at what's going down. Okay. Next verse. Now, there are all these riots and stuff going on, and we'll go back to Abby Hoffman and the riots up there in Chicago. What a field day for the heat. 1,000 people in the street, singing songs and carrying signs. Mostly say hooray for our side. It's time we stop. Children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop, children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop, children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Okay, so Abby Hoffman says, where'd all these hippies come from? And I just gave you some background that probably most of you didn't know, except for maybe Bob.
No, I didn't know that.
Who knows it comes through Time magazine. A CIA plot. Huh. Germinating in Germany, where the Wundervogels came from.
Wonderful.
Yeah, the Wundervogels. 100 years before. And been occupying that very area. All right, so here's the conclusion. Paranoia strikes deep into your life, it will creep.
starts when